Welcome to Peninsula Seniors Out and About. Today we're at the Western Museum of Flight in Torrance for one of their celebrity lectures. Let's go see what Cindy has for us today.
Thank you all for coming today to the Western Museum of Flight. I'm Cindy Maka and I'm the director of the museum. Because we are blessed here in Southern California with many illustrious members of America's aerospace community, we tend to expect a lot from our VIP Celebrity Lecture Series. Today, I can promise that your expectations will be fulfilled. Today's guest is a local boy who proved himself at a very young age, taking his rightful place among our illustrious cadre. Norm Stevens earned his place as a bombardier, flying 34 combat missions in the European theater of operations in World War II, and as a member of the illustrious 8th Air Force. Not resting on his laurels, Norm has continued to serve as one of Southern California's illustrious solid citizens as well, and true to form, has agreed to join us today to share some of his experiences and offer some of his special brand of inspiration. Ladies and gentlemen, Norm Stevens.
Well, thank you for the introduction, Cindy, and thanks very much for inviting me here this morning. I'm here mainly to talk about my latest book, Back from Combat. After I came home from overseas, the war is still going on, and I'm still in the service. So what's going to happen? Am I going to go back into where I came from before and do some more missions, or something else? And that's what this book deals with. So first of all, I want to take you back to 1943. World War II was raging in Europe and Asia, and I became 18 at the same time. So that means that I'm going to be involved in the war, unless I'm 4 or F or I have some job that is essential. So I know I'm going to go in, so I have to decide which branch of the service I want. I was most interested in the Army Air Corps, so I went downtown Los Angeles and went to the recruiting office, and I took all these tests, physical and written tests, and they said, yeah, we want you in the Air Force, but you have to wait until you're drafted. And so I said, okay, and when you're drafted, we'll send your papers down to the induction center, and you'll get it on the cadet training. So that's exactly what happened. About a month after that, April of 1943, I was inducted into the service. I was just a guy like this. I know you can't all see that very well. A young guy with his dog, minding my own business when all this happened. But I wasn't the only one that went in. There's an article here in this paper. I grew up in Inglewood, California, not too far from here, and there's an article in here saying 23 men from the 500 block on Brett Street are in the armed services now. So that was my block, and I mentioned in that article, just on one block are 23 men that are in the armed services. So it was certainly it just picked up on everybody. So they put me on they finally drafted me, put me on a Pacific Electric car, and we went down to Fort MacArthur. I thought that was, when we went in there, it was kind of late in the day, and so they said, well, you better go down and eat, better go down to the mess hall. They said, just pick out your steak, and we'll fix it for you. And I thought, wow, this is really going to be good here. But of course that deteriorated slightly after that. So after a week, about a week there at the induction center, I was sent to San Antonio, Texas. And that's why I have this big map of Texas up here. Texas is so big they can't get it all on one map. So this is San Antonio. And San Antonio, they gave us every kind of test you can possibly think of. Written tests, physical tests, coordination tests, all kinds of tests. And they were to decide there whether you were going to be a pilot or a navigator or a bombardier. I wanted to be a bombardier, and although I qualified for all three, they gave me my choice. So I became a bombardier, and so I became a cadet, and looked like that, kind of a young kid. So you don't get in an airplane right away just because you're in the Air Force. So I was sent here to Ellington Field in Houston, Texas, and that's where we had pre-flight. Never was in a plane there. In fact, it's the first time we even touched an airplane. They had airplanes there, and we go down and we touch the sides of them, and it just kind of pat them like that and listen to that sound. But that's as close as we ever got to it. But they tried to toughen us up there, and mentally and physically. When we were finished there, they sent us down here to Laredo, Texas, which is right on the Mexican border, and that was for aerial gunnery. In aerial gunnery, they put us in AT-6s in the back, and then they gave us a .30 caliber machine gun, and we went up with flights of 3, and then we had another plane out there towing a target, and our job was to hit that target with the plane going up and down and the target going up and down. It wasn't very easy. So we also learned turrets and everything else down there. And then I was sent up to Midland, Texas. Plenty of room around here for bombardier training. And you will notice that there's not much around there. Plenty of open country there to drop bombs in and shoot bullets. So I spent 12 weeks learning how to be a bombardier. And I graduated from there and had my bombardier's wings, and I was commissioned as a second lieutenant. Notice how innocent that person looks? Well, he was. I'm very young. I wrote about all that experience in this book called The Innocent Cadet, and I wanted to show you that picture just to let you show how innocent I was. I knew very little about the world, believe me, but I found out an awful lot about it. So I was involved in all this training for all this time, almost a year, and then I was sent overseas. But first of all, of course, we went to Louisiana, Alexandria, Louisiana, for B-17 training. This is where I met my crew. We stayed together. We stayed together through our training. We stayed together overseas. So we flew across the Atlantic. I thought maybe we would fly across the Atlantic, maybe 2 or 3 of us during the daylight, but they sent us out singly at night. And you have no idea how black the Atlantic is at night. There's just nothing. And you're hoping that your navigation is going to be sufficient. Well, it was sufficient, and we flew to Valley, Wales. From there, we went to another place called Stone, where they gave us some other instructions. And then we were sent to Polebrook, This is a map of England here, and this is Polbrook. Right here, about 80. London is down here. Polbrook is up there. That's the home of the 351st Bomb Group. But we were only one of many bomb groups. That's a map of the East Anglia area here. This big bulge in the coastline, and all these dots that you see on there are either fighter bases or heavy bomber bases. So there are about 46 heavy bomber bases all in that area. We're pretty much to the west over here. This is Polbrook. There were a lot of us over there. But from there, from Polbrook, I flew on 34 bombing missions. And I would just like to describe maybe one mission just to get an idea of what it was. First of all, they wake you up early in the morning, about 3 o'clock, and not gently, but they come in with a flashlight and they turn on all the lights, and they say, listen up, and these are the guys who are going to fly today. And you hear your name, and I can't tell you quite what that feeling is like when they read your name. But they say, okay, breakfast at 4 o'clock, briefing at 5. At that time, we have no idea where we're going. So we go out in the dark. It's still shadowy in the morning before sunlight. It's kind of surreal, people walking around in the feeble light. You can smell the dew of the morning. And finally, after breakfast, and by the way, they fed us well. Never complained about the food there. We go into briefing, and we get into briefing. There's a big map, but it has curtains in front of it. Those curtains, and that hides where we're going for the day. The briefing officer comes in, the curtains are pulled apart, and then it's revealed where we're going to fly for the day. The reaction of the crews when you see that parted is really interesting. If it's going to be a bad day ahead, if it's something deep into Germany, there's a kind of a quietness that goes over the group. It's not like it is in the movies where they say we're going to bomb Berlin today and everyone says, hey, great. It's not quite like that. You can't say that when you know that may be your last mission. So that we go outside and get into trucks. Since our bombers are dispersed all over the field, we ride out there in a truck and are ready to go for the bombing mission. The sky is beginning to lighten up a little bit. The Lancasters are coming back from their night journeys, night bombing raids. One raid there, just as an example, this is a raid to Hamburg, Germany. This is England over here, and Germany is over here. So we take off in a symbol. That's what this is, where this circle looks. Then we head out over the North Atlantic, staying away from land as long as possible to protect ourselves from flak and air attacks. We fly over Denmark. We make a feint towards Kiel, the big naval base, but then we just about get to Kiel because we want to keep them thinking. Then we turn on a course down to Hamburg. You can't believe what that flak looks like when you approach a target, and such was the way it was at Hamburg. The sky is is this black with anti-aircraft fire. Maybe you can remember cold mornings many years ago when they used to use smudge pots around for the citrus, and it get all dark. That's the way it sort of looked. And you know you have to fly through it. There's nothing you can do about it. So we headed into that flak. At the same time, we had a gun crew down there that they were tracking us. And since we were flying low in the low group in the back, we were a good target. So they finally bracketed us with 4 bursts of anti-aircraft fire, injuring our ball turret gunners severely and punching a lot of holes in our plane. But all 4 engines continued. We came back, we went as fast as we could. We got out here over the North Sea again and came down back to England. When we came back down, flew over the target, and we shot a red flare up showing that we had wounded on board. And at the same time, they told us that our right landing gear was disabled. So our pilot decided that he would try a one-wheel landing. And he was successful at that. He was an excellent pilot. But you can't go straight on the runway very far with that. And finally, we veered off the runway into the grass and banged around, but didn't catch fire. And they came out and got us in a truck and took our wounded ball turret gunner into the hospital. So finally, after these 34 missions, they gave us a 30-day leave. That was the most pleasant experience of my life, I think, a 30-day leave after all of that. But it had to come to an end. So after that, they sent me right back to Midland, Texas, where I had graduated from Bombardier School. And so I want to read a few excerpts from my newest book, Back from Combat. I lean back in my Pullman seat. I'm on a train now going to Midland, gazing out the vast desert of gravel and scrawny mesquite under an arid blue sky. After my 30-day furlough at home, I'm much more relaxed, maybe even a bit lazy. The constant rhythm of the wheels ticking over the rails lulls me into a sleepy reverie. Rolling across West Texas on the Southern Pacific train reminds me of the time over a year ago when I was on my way to San Antonio to begin cadet training. It seems so long ago. Since then, I had gone through months of study and conditioning, aerial gunnery and bombardier training, preparation for combat, and survived 34 bombing missions in Europe. Back then, the adventure was all ahead of me. All of that excitement, apprehension, and curiosity was yet to come. Now it's all behind me, all those emotions having faded into dreams and memories. So I was back at Midland with many other veteran bombardiers who had returned to survive, and we didn't do much of anything. We would had a little bit of physical education, and saw old training movies. It got in our flying time, but essentially they didn't really know what to do with us. But they finally gave us 4 options. They said, okay, one thing you can do is volunteer for another tour of duty. And none of us wanted to do that. Lucky to get through it the first time. Second was to become a navigator and be sent to Selman Field, Louisiana for training, but that would lead back into combat again. Third opportunity was what they call BTO, bombing through the overcast. That's using radar to locate targets and navigate to the targets and bomb them. But that would lead to the Pacific in B-29s. The last option would be an instructor, and you could be in the training command. Well, I didn't want to go overseas. I didn't particularly want to go into navigation since I'd already had a lot of it. I did not want to be an instructor, so I decided I would go to a bombing through the overcast school. So I made that choice. So after weeks of vegetation, they kindly sent me to Langley Field, Virginia. Langley Field, Virginia is an old established air base. So when I got it on that base, I saw that it was very different from any place I'd ever been. Langley Field perplexes me at first. The main portion of the base is a campus-like complex of permanent two-story brick buildings with tall chimneys surrounded by lawns and stately trees. Kind of looked like a college campus. These structures, I learned right away, are for the permanent officers. My quarters are located far away on another portion of the field at a section called Shell Bank. The ground here consists of small fragments of shells, as if the whole area was dredged up from the bay. My shoes crunch the shells as I walk towards my barrack. Shell Bank is so isolated that the mess hall is nearly a mile away. I'm the only combat bombardier in the barrack, the other men being commissioned navigators and bombardiers that had graduated only a month before. Most of them are flight officers, a grade below second lieutenant. Even though I'm only 20, they all seem so young to me, younger than the men I trained with when I was a cadet. They act like high school kids, but I hope they'll settle down after a while. Overseas and then at Midland and Selman Field, I was with officers who were veterans. I suppose there's a seriousness and sadness about us. That experience changed us all. Perhaps that's why the new officers in my barracks seem so young. There's a darkness about us veterans. We have pictures in our heads that they don't. I'll understand the new officers once I get to know them. And I did. And when I got to know them, I found out they were wonderful guys, and I really bonded with them. Since I outranked them, I was just selected as their leader. I was a first lieutenant by that time. So from my book, the war looks a little better now that the American tanks patrol the streets of major German cities. They bring peace to places like Ludwigshafen, where when only a short time ago, flak batteries had thrown up murderous barrages that we had to fly through to bomb their chemical plants. In the skies high over that city, a jagged shard of shrapnel from the barrage dug into Podolsky, the co-pilot's thigh. It's where they shot out our oxygen system, forcing us to scramble for spare bottles. In a way, the taking of the city is a kind of revenge for what they did to us. Personally, I feel a warm sense of satisfaction. Germany can't hold out much longer. And then VE Day, May 8th, 1945, finally arrives, 1 week after the death of Franklin Roosevelt. And the radar set we've been learning so assiduously, the APS-15, is now obsolete. That's what they were using in Europe. So we have to learn a new secret type of an improved type, an APQ-7 radar set, but we have to go to Williams Field in Arizona to do that. I'm offered a job as an instructor at Langley, so I have to make a decision. Should I take that, or should I and be safe, or should I go on with the guys? Because the Pacific War is still going on. And I know what that's going to lead to. It's going to lead to B-29s. So was it the right decision? Perhaps going on with the men just because they've become my good friends will lead me in a combat tour in the Pacific. Staying here as an instructor would keep me safe. So I went out to Williams Field with them, and I liked what we did, except that the B-24s that we flew in there needed better maintenance. They were always causing us troubles. This is just one incident. We roared down the runway in the late afternoon, daylight beginning to fade. Just as our plane clears the ground, we lose an oil line on the number 4 engine, preventing us from obtaining full power. Luckily, we're in a stripped-down version of the B-24 and carry no bombs or extra fuel. If this had been a takeoff in combat, we would have plowed into the earth. Not having full power, we barely gain altitude. Our plane struggles only a few hundred feet above the ground. Oil spews out of the engine and leaves a thick trail of black smoke behind us. We're too low to bail out. The sooty smoke billows and the engines grow hotter and hotter, and I'm sweating beneath my flying suit, and it's not from the heat. My God, did I survive all those bombing missions just to crash in the Arizona desert? The pilot tries to gain altitude, but he needs to feather the propeller so it'll stop turning and tearing up the engine. Would he have enough hydraulic pressure to do it? The engine is about to burst into flame. I'm praying silently, but finally the pilot controls the prop. We circle low over the field once, then mercifully set it down. The squeal of the tires as they kiss the runway is a sweet, sweet sound. I suppose it's every airman's dream to fly over his own house. And here I am at Williams Field, Arizona. I was as close as I've ever been to my house in Inglewood, California. And one day we're on a mission that's going to take us into that area because I'm going to bomb Mines Field, which is, Mines Field is now LAX. But we didn't actually bomb it. All we did was we pretended we were bombing it, and at the time of bomb release, we took a photograph that would show where our bombs would have hit. So we're several days later. We're 92 miles off the Baja California coast when our engines begin to sputter and cough. We can see nothing but water in every direction, only the hazy blue Pacific. Our one engine begins to leak oil and leave a trail of white smoke. I'm tired of sweating out these planes, always being concerned about getting into nerve-wracking predicaments like this. As precaution, we all slip into our bright yellow Mae West, securing them tightly. If we have to ditch in the water, we'll be ready. I quickly plot a course for San Diego, the pilot turning the big ship around, hoping the engines would get over their fits. They did. After reaching San Diego, we turned north along the coast towards Mines Field, which is to be the next target on our route. If the engines act up again, we're going to land at Los Angeles, which is fine with me. But the engines continue to purr. Mines Field is only 5 miles from my home in Inglewood, the closest I have ever been to it in flight. Knowing that we would fly over Inglewood on our bombing route, I had alerted my parents to watch for us, even though we would be at least 12,000 feet high. Swooping in over Long Beach, I'm on the bomb run for Mines Field. The moment after I yell, "Bombs away," I leave the radar set and scramble down into the nose with Herb. He's my partner. With the pilot's permission, I take charge of the plane, guiding it with a Norden bomb sight connected to the autopilot. By the time I dash into the nose, we're in a position just west of the familiar Baldwin Hills. By manipulating the bomb sight, I gradually turn the plane around and fly it towards Inglewood from the northeast, and then swing it around to the right. Another slow turn brings me in from the east, and there's my house. My wonderful house, 12,000 feet below us. The pattern of the streets, including Brett Street, that's my street, is very distinctive. And the house next door has a bright blue roof, so finding my house is easy. I gawk at it until it begins to fade out of view. That miniature Monopoly house down there, where my parents and sister go about their daily lives, where most of my life had been lived. So I had told my parents they never saw me. After all that, because we were delayed, they finally gave up, and their backs and necks were sore for 3 days afterwards because of trying to look up there. So they never did see me. Finally, by the way, this APQ-7 was so secret at that time that we couldn't take our notes back to our barracks to study them. We had to leave them in a vault, and the next day we came in, we had to open the vault and take out our notes. I've had some time to contemplate where my decisions are taking me. I choose to stay with the group of men I trained with, and I had decided to travel with them here to Williams Field. We were becoming expert radar bombardiers and would be used on B-29 bombers for the all-out assault on Japan. It means going back into combat again, something I didn't really have to do, letting the pleasure of camaraderie with the men guide me into that situation. So we completed our training at Williams Field. I was given a short leave after that, and then I was sent to Harrington, Kansas to join B-29 crews. So that leave is over, and I'm on the train now going to Kansas. The monumental event that happened while I was on leave was the dropping of the atomic bomb at Hiroshima on August 6, 1945. Every paper carried photos of the great mushroom cloud rising over the utter destruction of the city. The use of the bomb was a horrible event, instantly killing over 90,000 human beings. How could Japan survive and carry on with the war? We all thought the Japanese would have to capitulate now. Only a few days later, on August 9th, another bomb devastated Nagasaki. Surely that would convince them to quit. Then it was official, the Japanese surrendered. But what does it all mean for me? It means that the war is over, that I'm going to live. I'm jubilant like everyone else because, being human, I think about my own life. The carnage thousands of miles across the Pacific being relegated to the edges of my consciousness. That terrible event releases me from the possibility that I might die. So we are in Kansas for a while, and although there are B-29 crews there, they don't assign us to them. we get some time in B-29s, just not flying with radar, but just getting in our flying time. And they don't really know what to do with this. So they say, well, we're going to send you to Pueblo, Colorado, because there's some crews, B-29 crews that are supposed to meet up there. But they don't know what to do with this either, and because the war is essentially over, and all this pent-up energy, all these men who are trained, all these planes that were built, all the weapons that were built, ready for that big assault on Japan, is stopped. And now no one knows what to do. The commanders are wondering what's going to happen to their groups. So we had drills. They sent us out on thoughtless drills, and there was absolutely nothing to do there. But luckily there was a system where you had so many points you were able to get out of the service. And there at Pueblo, I finally had enough. And I wrote this in my last letter home in service. There within 48 hours, my destination is San Bernardino, California. There within about 48 hours after arriving, I will be a civilian. My approval of discharge came through Saturday morning. I had to wait until Monday to clear the field. So tomorrow night at 2200 hours, I'll take the Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe for good old California. I arrive in San Bernardino at 9:15 Saturday on the California Limited. I'll report to San Bernardino Army Airfield. I'm so happy, it's pitiful. This kid is coming home for good. So with that ends my whole military career. So I just, and that of course is in this book, Back from Combat. And I just wanted to tell you too that in the back of this book there's an afterword, several, about 10 or 12 stories that are not just chronologically with me in the service, but are related to it. And one of them is about Hibbard's airplane. In this book, I wrote about Hibbard's airplane, and I'll tell you about that. The day our crew returned from leave, we learned that our group was on a mission to Genshagen, Germany, near Berlin, and it was everybody was gone. So we were there sitting on our beds, and abruptly this officer walks in, and he said, "Get your flying stuff on. You're going to have to fly to Beccles." That was a airfield on the east coast of Germany, not Germany, of England. And one of our badly damaged planes had made an emergency landing there, and we were to go in there and pick up the crew. So we did that, and we landed at Beccles, and here's this plane that is just, I've never seen a plane so full of holes in all my life. Big, gaping holes that where the metal's all spread out like that. But there were only 3 people on the crew. All the rest of them had bailed out over Germany. The pilot told them that they had to bail out. The Navigator was just about to bail out, but then he looked up and saw the pilot and co-pilot were still sitting there and not making any move. And so he went up and said, what's happening? And he said, I think we can get this plane to England. And I want you to give us a heading. So he just gave us a heading of west 180, and that's about the best you could do. And then they found that airport. So after I published Innocent Polbrook, a fellow in Sonora, California, had picked up my book and read it, and he wrote me a letter. And he said that I was the flight engineer on that plane, and I was one of the guys who bailed out. And I never knew what happened to those people. And so he wrote me a series of letters after that about his experiences in that camp, and I've included those just word for word in my book. But I'd like to call your attention to just one passage. When they were picked up, they were sent to Frankfurt, Germany. That was the interrogation center. The German interrogator at Frankfurt asked him to tell him something about the transfer of fuel on the B-17. Harris, the man's name, refused to answer. His pleasant demeanor suddenly changed, and with screaming language, he announced that he knew all about me. And with that, he pulled out a large black book. He flipped it open and began to read my history in the Air Force. Every training school I attended was listed. How do you know this? And he says, you stupid Americans. Our spies have given us all the information we need on every airman. And I want to show you one way that they got that information. This is the Englewood paper. Again, this Englewood paper is from July 14th, 1944. As you can see, here in the back, it tells, these articles were sent home from every time a soldier or sailor or Marine moved up or did something or was decorated, it was in the paper. And all they had to do was just collect these, and they had a dossier on everybody. I still want to know what the dossier is on mine. And there's an article here about me. Lieutenant Charles Stevens, decorated with Air Medal for achievement. And then it tells all here, gives my folks' address and everything else. So it wasn't hard for him to gather that information and surprise people. Okay, I just have just a few pictures to show here. That was when I came back from overseas. You could see the happiness on that face. I was back in my own home again after all that, and I'm feeling pretty good. And at the same time, that's my sister, who was a nurse cadet at the same time. And this is my family, my father and mother, the place I wanted to get back to the whole time I was anywhere. That's all I thought about was getting back home. And this is Langley Field. You can see the college campus look of it. But that's my barracks, way out from everybody else in Shellbank. These are some of my friends at Langley. And that's our theater at Langley. Again, it's kind of isolated, but it was a wonderful place to be. They moved us to Arizona. That looks like it might be Hawaii, but it's not. They had to plant all these trees around there, palm trees, to make it look a little bit habitable. And that's me at Williams Field. Yeah, these are the B-24s out on the flight line, and we use these B-24s to learn the APQ-7 radar. And this is just flying around the Phoenix area. Thank goodness they had a pool there. It was so hot, and that's about the only way that we could cool off. Yeah, I just wanted to show some of the B-17s that are making the rounds of Southern California. This is the aluminum overcast that's at, this picture was taken right here on this field at Torrance. This is a sentimental journey. This is at San Diego. They were taking people up that day. And this is the 909 of the Collins Foundation. This is taken at John Wayne Airport there, just outside the Lion Museum, where they were going through on tours. And this is hard to see, but I'm in the nose of this plane. This is the one that they have at Palm Springs. Palm Springs, they said, gee, why don't you go up in your old position again, see how it feels. And, you know, I used to get up in that plane by going up through the hatch and getting on that and just throwing your body up in there. Well, I can't do that anymore. They had a ladder. I went up the ladder, and I think it took me 20 minutes to get up there. That plane had been out in the sun all day long. It was hot. And it was, they don't know what I went through to get up there. And this is the Liberty Bell. Unfortunately, we don't have the Liberty Bell anymore. It caught fire in flight in the Midwest and landed in a field and burned. The Liberty Foundation that runs this, that they claim that they're going to restore it. In the meantime, they have the B-17 that was used as the Liberty Bell in the movie, The Liberty Bell. Memphis Bell, yeah. And they're going to take that around next year, they think. That's the only flying B-24 that belongs to the Collins Foundation, the only one in the whole world that flies. Okay, that's all. Thank you so much for your kind attention. So, do you have any questions or yes? The time between the first and the last mission. First mission was just after D-Day, on about June 6th, and then the last one was in the beginning of October. Yeah.
How many of your first class survived the third and fourth mission?
I'm sorry,
What percentage lived to survive that long for mission? Are you one of very...
Yeah, in 1944, 66% of us survived.
And one geographical question. Williams Field, is that near Williams, Arizona? Or is it...
Yes, it is. I think Chandler is another city that's close to it. In 1943, it was only 35% of the crews that finished. The question is, how many men were flying in the squadron? Well, we would fly 12 planes. There were 12 planes in the squadron. We had nine men on every plane. It used to be 10, but they changed it to 9. Oh, yes, sir. Way in the back. The question was, I guess, what prompted me to be a bombardier rather than a navigator or a pilot? There are a couple of things. One, I hardly knew how to drive a car at that time. I was only 18 years old. We could never afford a car for me in high school, and I knew very little about that. So I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure that I could handle that at that age. Besides that, I had gone. They used to have the newsreel theaters down in Los Angeles, and the newsreels they were showing were mainly from the war. And I went down there and I saw one on the British bombing at night, and there was a bombardier. It featured a bombardier, and I decided, I think that's what I want to do. So that's what prompted me to be a bombardier, and I asked to be a bombardier, and they gave it to me. So. Yes. Yeah. The question is, what happened after I got out of the service? Did I stay in the military or in the aerospace industry? No, I went directly to UCLA on the GI Bill and graduated from there and got my teaching credential, and I taught for 32 years. And I taught science general science for quite a while, and then I switched and I taught English. I got a master's degree in English, and decided I wanted to teach that, and they let me. And so I ended up by teaching American literature. Okay, the question was, were the Messerschmitts still in the air when I was doing my combat missions? Yes, they were still there. We were in a squadron that I was flying in. We were never attacked by Messerschmitts. On one occasion, Messerschmitts hit the group behind us, and they flew under us. I could see them down there, and then they went up and hit the group ahead of us. Whether that was because it was easier for them to do that, or we were just flying tight formation and they were afraid of us, I don't know. But I saw them around, but they didn't attack us. The only ones that ever attacked us were the Focke-Wulf 190s.
A follow-up, did we also have fighters escorting you?
Were there fighters escorting us? Yes. We had P-38s and P-47s that would take us part way to the target or pick us up part way back, and we had P-51 Mustangs over the target. And they were a great help. I love all those guys, P-51s. Every time I find out someone was a P-51 pilot, I shake their hand and thank them for protecting us. One more question. The question was there only one bombardier in a formation where the others dropped on him, and did the enemy try to get that plane because they knew that had the bomb sight in it? And the answer is yes, that's the way it was. Out of 12 planes of one squadron, we had one lead bombardier and then a deputy in case something happened to the lead.
And you were the lead bombardier?
No, I was never lead bombardier, no. We made a deal before we even went overseas. My pilot said, we don't want anything to do with being a lead anything.
Great pilot.
And the reason for that was because if you're in a lead plane, you don't fly nearly as much, and so you're over there much longer. He said, I want to get in there and get out. And so if you want to go with me, that's the way it's going to be. So that's what we did. Okay, how do you know when the lead guy drops? That's visual, yeah. As soon as we get into the target area and we see the lead bombardier open his bomb bay doors, everyone opens the bomb bay doors, and they watch. And when the bomb started to go, then everyone else drops. And it's predetermined how we're going to drop them. We set an intervalometer for intervals so that we can string them out. And so I think I'll close it right there.
Thank you for watching Peninsula Seniors Out and About here at the Western Museum of Flight in Torrance. I'm Betty Wheaton. I'll see you next time.